Okay, I just got through watching a video made by David Carroll responding to a guy who asked him about the whole ghetto gaggers thing, why he doesn't address it. What I'm going to deal with is he asked the question about why no one ever questions the black preacher, why no one ever attacks him. And this is coming from a guy, me. I come from a city where I went up a 3 mile stretch of a main street in the city, and there were, I believe, 83 churches, about 12 funeral homes, 2 grocery stores, and about 12 liquor stores. This is a 3 mile stretch. There are, what, 5, 6, 7 times as many churches and funeral homes as there are actual businesses. There are only about 2 gas stations in this 3 mile stretch. Two. That's utterly ridiculous. There are some areas where there are, see, one big church, smaller church, 2 storefront churches, another church here. That's 5. A kingdom hall, another church, and a funeral home. That's 7 churches and a funeral home. 2 blocks in 2 square blocks. The only area that was clean was around the kingdom hall. There's so much religion in the black community that most black people don't know anything else. But as to why we don't question black preachers is because we're raised by the very same black women who are being exploited by these preachers. This is who's raising us. I sat in a hospital for a family member, and every black woman there, every 2 seconds she said, God this, Jesus that, right? I brought up the fact that if someone is dying, they have a choice. They have the choice to give up or to fight. It's the fight or flight response. It happens to you while you're alive. If your body is still alive, you're still alive, and you're jacked up, you have that ability to say, you know what, I give up, or I'm not ready to go yet, right? But most black women believe that they don't really have a choice in their life. It's all in God's hands. Everything is in God's hands. When last I checked, God gave man free will. God gave man choice. But they don't believe in that part of their religion. They believe no matter what happens in their life, just give it to God. Just give it to Jesus. It's Jesus to say. It's Jesus. Jesus this, Jesus that. God forgives. Jesus forgives. Jesus died for my sins. And last I checked, none of us were alive when Jesus was alive. So he died for a sin that you weren't even born to commit yet. I don't see the logic in that. But this is what we are told. This is what we are made to believe. This is what's beaten into our head, literally and figuratively. Because I've questioned Christianity in front of some black women, especially older black women or those black women who are always in church or devout Bible thumpers. And these women actually tried to fight because I questioned their Jesus. Because I told them, if you read the book, it tells you Jesus is not white. Why are you sitting here bowing down to this white man with blonde hair and blue eyes on the cross? The book tells you he ain't got none of that. If you look up Herodotus, he tells you the ancient Hebrews didn't look like that. Jesus was Hebrew. He was of the Hebrew. The predecessors to what we now call Jews. But Hebrews don't look shit like Jews. The people you see on TV of Israel don't look shit like what that book say Jesus looked like. What Herodotus, who actually went to Egypt when the Hebrew were there, he says they look like we do. Same fuzzy ass hair, same wide noses. We're just darker than them. They're burnt bronze. We're ebony. Well, I'm not ebony, but I'm close enough. That's the only real difference. They look similar to what we do, just a lighter complexion. Who the hell is over there in Israel? But you can't bring that logic up to a black woman. I could to an Indian man, a black man, and a white man. Hell, even a Pakistani woman. But you can't say that to a black woman. This is why we don't question the black church, the black preachers. Because all our lives we had it beaten into our head that you don't question pastor, you don't question white Jesus, you don't question the Bible. When every other religion on the earth does. We are also taught that if you give it to God, you're not responsible for your actions because now God's going to take over it. I work with Muslims, and the whole Ramadan thing just happened. If you cheat one day on Ramadan and say, oh, I can't wait until sundown to eat, I can't wait until 9 p.m., you got to make that day up. You can't just say, oh, Allah forgives, which is their word for God. You can't just, it says the God. You can't just say, oh, well, he forgives. No, you got to make that shit up. You got to pay a price for that. But not in Christianity, which most black women are. I mean, it's the perfect religion for them. It's the perfect religion for feminists. You're not responsible for shit you do. It's like, oh, I made a mistake, I'm going to give it to God. I beat the hell out of my child, my child's head is bleeding. Oh, I'm just going to pray to white Jesus. And somehow my kid's going to be okay. Even though the kid ends up with brain damage, now it's, oh, this was God's will. No, bitch, this was your will. But this is why no one questions the black preacher. We know he's a pimp. We know he's a drug dealer. We know he used to be, prostitute. He used to do all of these things. We know this. We know these things. Because most of the time we know this man who's now a preacher. Because when we were kids, this was the same man that was either pimping our mama, beating the hell out of our mama, selling her drugs, or on drugs with her. But yet now, when mom gets out of rehab, we're supposed to go to this man's church and listen to him preach, tell us what's right and wrong, when we grew up seeing this man doing all the wrong. I asked these same questions of my grandfather. He was one of those people who did all these terrible things and became a preacher. And this man who admits to all the things he did wrong, grandmother still married him when she got old, after he'd done all this do, became a preacher, banned me from going to a church that I enjoyed going to because he said, how can I go preach the word of God to these people when my own family won't go with me? So you care more about perception than you do about the word. But as he got older and learned what was going on, he went to a church, and one of the deacons told him, you need to get hooked up with one of these sisters in the church. They'll take care of you. And initially he wrote it off, but then he thought about it after talking with me and said, you know what? I can't be a part of that no more. How can I be a man of God and I'm listening to people who doing wrong? I'm following people who doing wrong. But this is in his 70s when he finally learned what a man is. Or learned how to face his flaws and do something about them. So I ask you this question. If we have it beaten into our head that by the very same woman who is being exploited by this preacher and is doing it happily, because most black women know a man has a woman, that makes her want him more. How do we change this? And this is something I'm going to figure out in a later video. But to David Carroll and everyone else, this is why no one attacks the black preacher. Because mama, the one that raised us, the one that's getting exploited by the preacher before and after he became a preacher, has beaten it into our head all our lives. That you don't question the black preacher because he gets his divine authority from God and from white Jesus. And what's the one thing a black woman will always bow down to? A white man, especially white Jesus. Thank you, and I hope I answered your question.